Transforming your career with the CAPM. Today's topic. Hi, I'm Joshua Barnes, and once again, I am joined by Chastine Lynch. Hi, Chastine.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, and so today we're going to talk about the Certified Associate in Project Management, also known as the CAPM. It just recently, back in July, on the 25th, it celebrated its 20th year anniversary. I was fortunate to be at the Agile Alliance conference and at the PMI booth, and so there was a lot of festivities and a lot of celebration around not only the anniversary, but a renewed version of the CAPM. And one of the things of most interest was that the new version includes Agile Content. And Chastine has delivered the CAPM and has delivered the new version. And so we thought it would be a great idea to have a little bit of a discussion and to hear from somebody who is helping people as they go through the workshop and prepare for the certification, which obviously is important, but also what you learn within the workshop to get that certification and how it can help you transform your career. So Chastine, how about just for everybody out there, introduce yourself a little bit, give a little bit of maybe your background, and let's get into the discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited to be here today. Like you said, I got to teach this course and it's such quality content. So excited to talk about it. I have been in project management for 15 years. And then I've been an instructor in project management or Agile for about the last 4. And it's so fulfilling to get to teach these classes, and then students will reach out to me and be like, oh my gosh, the class was like so great, thank you, or I passed my class. And when it first started happening, I was like, man, I find that more fulfilling than I ever thought it would be. So I get excited about teaching these classes. But the CAPM is a new course delivery, and it benefits so many people outside of project management, and it is an excellent way to transform your career.
Yeah, I had seen a statistic that came out from PMI, and I think it came from the source was like Entrepreneur maybe. And the CAPM is ranked number 1 out of the 9 most currently in demand project or professional certifications that you can get. And it's one of the things I've seen more and more on colleagues on LinkedIn is both people that are either sort of in a role or a titled position of project manager, but a lot of them that aren't, that I'm now seeing the CAPM right behind their name as well. So that's something else that's been quite interesting about this designation.
Yeah, so I'm fortunate, I don't just teach, I'm a practitioner. So I have, Upskilled Evolution is my business, and we do project management consulting, we do training, we also do recruiting. And so it's really interesting because we'll recruit, say, for like a healthcare role. And we'll reach out to someone and say, hey, would you be interested? And they are looking for remote roles. And as an RN, a remote role isn't that common. And then it is very competitive. And so what I tell people is, does your resume stand out amongst about 1,000 other resumes? Because in about 72 hours for a remote RN role, they're going to get about 1,000 applications. And I don't say this to discredit people or keep them from wanting to pursue their career. But when you're working a remote role, especially if you're coming from an industry where working remote is not common, employers are looking for certain skill sets. And these skill sets are what we learn as a foundation as project managers. And so if you're an accountant or let's say you're in procurement, you're in healthcare, and you're wanting to make that switch, especially towards working more of a remote role, well, collectively, most of us project managers are working remotely. And it's because we are trained and develop that skill set in project management, which is time management, accountability, communication. And maybe as a foundation, you have that already, but does your resume say it? And so that's why the CAPM, the Certified Associate Project Manager, is such a great tool for anyone in any industry to add that training, to add that certification, and then stand out amongst those 1,000 people that are applying for those remote roles. And it's not just healthcare, by the way. It's project manager roles. It's really anything remote. People are descending upon them now that we're used to working in that environment. And yeah, you really got to stand out.
So with some of the new content, or the content that's been maybe renewed or refreshed a little bit, right? So there's agile content, there's business analysis stuff that's in the
Yes.
CAPM, and some of the predictive plan-based things.
Mhm.
So what's some of the agile content that is now in, and as an instructor of this, what are some of the things that you also bring into the workshop, just so that people have a good understanding of what agile ways of working are?
Yeah, well, for starters, it's so important for anyone out there looking for training in terms of like the CAPM or even your PMP to take a course that is curated by PMI. As instructors, they don't really tell us, hey, these questions are going to be on the exam. So we can't really prep you in that way unless we take their curated training programs and then add our flavor to it. And anyone who's taken my course has experienced my flavor. And so, yeah, I get to bring from like a personal standpoint to say, hey, listen, here's how I really use this in the workplace. And here's how I really made a huge mistake and I was able to recover from it. Or here's how I navigated through this really difficult process and I used this step and this is what it looked like. And I always make sure to tell people, hey, this is what's in the course content. And then here's a little extra from Chastine. Here's how I've used it. And so one of the things that would drive me crazy when I would see, especially project managers, back in maybe like 2018, 2019, where Agile started to become a conversation in that traditional project management space. And they would be like, oh, Agile is for everyone. But no one would ever give an example of how to use it. And to me, that it drove me crazy. And it actually eventually drove me into wanting to teach classes because I thought someone's got to give these people examples. So in the CAPM, we get this great foundational information about Agile and the different frameworks like Scrum and Safe and Disciplined Agile that's inside of an Agile ideology. And it really allows the CAPM to have those conversations with an Agile team. Or if you're looking to customize the way that you approach your work, you have these foundations of Agile that you can look back on from the training.
Yeah, so a couple of things that came to mind. A lot of professional certifications are tied to, if you get this certification, you'll get a bump in pay, right? You might be able to get that next promotion or whatever. But I think, and so I've had some of these discussions with people as you get into talks about certifications versus non-certifications. And one of the other things, though, that I think you've touched on, I think it's important for people to recognize, is that sometimes it's not just about getting maybe the next bump in pay or, some amount of increase. It's maybe keeping a position that you have, or again, like you said, in the example of healthcare, right? It's something that might give you that differentiator, even if you're not trying to move into a project manager, project professional type of role. It's something that's going to maybe help you get the next thing that you want from a career perspective.
Yeah.
The other thing is, and this is something that for anybody that's watched these live streams before, specifically the ones that I do that are on workshops, it's, don't just go to a course catalog or, a listing. Like, so PMI's got their course catalog, you go to it and you can filter on CAPM, you can filter on PMP, you can filter on the DA certifications and so forth. And you're going to see quite a few of them that are out there, right?
I did it this morning, 158 pages to siphon through for.
Yeah. And what happens, right? So people are just kind of looking for maybe a time or a date that fits, or maybe they're doing a little bit of price, comparative shopping, which, we have to do that. But I always say, look to your instructor, look them up on LinkedIn, and Chastine is an example, is not just an instructor. She doesn't do the CAPM today, and she's going to do a Scrum Master training tomorrow, and then she's going to teach you how to use some tool next week, right? She has a very specific set of workshops that she teaches, but it's based off of her experience, right? So she's a practitioner as well as somebody who's looking to place people in positions, right? I mean, that's like the trifecta right there. I mean, you're an instructor, you're a practitioner, and you're somebody who's placing people in the marketplace. So those are the types of things that you're going to benefit from, right? Again, looking to your instructor.
Yeah, some of the extra things that I do for the CAPM too is we'll go over, which is totally outside of the course content that's been curated from PMI, but my flavor is we'll go over good resume writing. How do you reflect in your resume that you've managed projects? And so I do this course. It's fun for like children, elementary age, where we make spaghetti using project management. We create our requirements and our backlog. We have a budget. We have a timeline. Obviously, we're not going to put the sauce on the noodles before we boil it. So we identify our dependencies. And so the idea is that, we make project management accessible. We make it make sense. And I do work with, if we want to talk about use cases, which is a fancy way to say, here's how you would do it. Here's the benefit you would get is, think about if you're a leader, and let's say you're a leader in like a finance department or again, procurement or marketing. Think of how much smoother your interactions would be with a project management team or a PMO, or if you're like in a VMO, value management office, if your team who's not in the PMO understood the concepts of project management. That when we say we're going to do this, that, or the other, it's not voodoo. There's a reason for it, and we're going to gain a benefit. And instead of having to go through this painful space where it's like, I don't understand these words, your team would know, and they would have these concepts, these foundational concepts of how to work project management, understand the nomenclature. When I first studied for my PMP many years ago, and at that point, I had been like a traditional project manager working in my own space, but I had never been trained. And when I started training for my PMP, I was like, who says these stupid words? Who talks like this? And then I got into a space where I wasn't just good at sending emails or tracking milestones. I was actually trained in project management. I was doing a lot of things on purpose. And I was like, oh, everyone says these words.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I wanted to make sure to bring up is, a lot of times I'll recommend if we've got somebody that is maybe a little junior in their career from like a Scrum Master, a team level Agile coach perspective, and we have organizations that have PMOs, they have project professionals, and they don't understand the terminology, or they don't understand some of what's in the business acumen. They don't understand, the principles that are within PMI, right, and project management. I've encouraged them. They might not have the level of experience, right? They're not managing projects, so PMP might be a little bit out of their reach. But taking something like the CAPM, where they're going to get a really good understanding and be able to have different types of discussions within organizations, which hopefully then they'll benefit, right? They'll be able to continue to progress up to maybe a more senior Agile coaching position and so forth. That's just, so if you're out there and you're a Scrum Master and you're watching this, or again, a team level coach, a team lead, consider something like the CAPM.
Yeah, in the CAPM too, we talk a lot about, we actually spend nearly a full day in like business analytics. And it's interesting, one of the things I see most Agile teams struggle with is translating the conversation from an Agile development and deployment into business acumen, to updates for your leaders, to empirical data. And we talk a lot about that. Like I said, a full day is dedicated to it, which is fantastic. I'm a data gal. I like empirical data. All subjective statements are made with objective data. And so it's really fantastic skill sets for anyone. The other bonus that we haven't talked about is, and I think this is super cool, when you get your CAPM certification. So we do the training in 3 days versus for the PMP that will span over 4 days. And then with the certification, which it is proctored, but it's online proctored, which is so much more comfortable for anyone who's ever had to do a proctor exam. And if you're like me, you failed your first PMP, so you got to do a proctor exam twice. So all these benefits. Once you get your CAPM, you now have all of the required training and education to apply for your PMP. Now, you have project management requirements to submit your application, but you don't have to go and take the PMP prep. And the CAPM plus the certification costs less than my PMP prep, which is already less than most PMP preps out there. So there's such a value add to your career and then to set you up and be prepared. And the content that we learn in the CAPM comes from PMBOK 7. It's not a separate book. It's just we focus on what the exam is going to be focused on and then what is going to be beneficial for a certified associate project manager who's going to span over all these different industries.
So I enroll in your class. It's a 3-day class.
Yeah.
Take me through just at a high level, those 3 days, like what are some of the things that I'm going to learn?
It is a jam-packed 3 days. There's a lot of content we go over. We're going to go over the foundational project management. We're going to talk about, how to actually utilize project management, when to identify to use a traditional predictive approach, and when to use an agile approach, how to customize your approaches, and then how to use a hybrid approach, which is what most people are doing in this day and age, where you're going to start with more of a hybrid waterfall phase gate process. You're going to go maybe into development. You're going to use something a little more agile. And then you're going to, the closure of the project, which can sometimes be the bane of a project manager's existence, is then back to predictive. So you might have to flop back and forth. So we give you the tool sets to understand how to do that and when to do it and what tools you can utilize. We go over the different management plans that we're going to utilize, your IDOs, your 49 IDOs, 49. So
not 50. You threw an extra one in there. Let's just make it
49 plans that consume your IDOs. So your inputs, your tools, your techniques, and your outputs. So lots to go over, understanding your process goals and your phases, what you're going to do in implementation, design, executing, monitoring, and closing. And then we're going to go over and say, okay, but then that's a traditional project management. Here's an agile approach, or how you can integrate the twos. And then also here's how you're going to be a good practitioner inside the business and identify what the business needs, how to analyze what you're doing, that plan, do, check, act. We talk a lot about Edward Deming's approach. We talk about the Tuckman theories, your forming, storming, norming, performing, talk about what teams look like when we're first coming together, and really prepare you to have great, productive conversations in just about any project management setting. And maybe at this point, you're not the lead project manager, but you can have very productive conversations, ask purposeful questions, and just become more productive on the team. So
you mentioned the word, customizing, and one of the 12 principles, right, from PMBOK 7, right, tailoring. Do you bring in, from a tailoring perspective, things like the DA knowledge base, right, the DA browser to be able to show? I assume yes, but I did want to at least work that in.
I don't do anything without the DA browser. The DA browser, Disciplined Agile, for those who are hearing this term for the first time, its strength is its weakness. It covers everything. There's a lot of stuff to go through, a lot of things to figure out when you're tackling it the first time. So the DA browser is, so we have Agile, and really Agile is just a concept. It's a way of thinking. And then people took the way of thinking Agile, and they developed all these methodologies that made sense for the 12 principles in Agile thinking. And they framed them with some bumpers and some ceremonies and became a framework. And so they say, okay, Scrum, here's your 11-page framework, and here you go. Only it makes the assumption, and most Agile framework make the assumption that as project managers or team leads or even Scrum masters, someone's done our business case, someone's identified our charter, our governance plan, our scope, our schedule, our budget, so on and so forth, our risks, our issues, and then they picked us up and they put us there with all that information already done, and they go, okay, go ahead and develop. That's not the case for project managers, and it's not the case for project teams, because we have all this work we have to do before we get to development. And so in the DA browser, so super cool, is they reverse engineered essentially Agiles. They said, okay, all these proven methodologies inside frameworks, we're going to pull you back out. We're going to pull you back out of these frameworks, and we're going to reorganize you during your phases. Now, this makes a lot of sense for a project manager, because we have initiation, we have construction, and then we have closing, and then we have ongoing, and we have governance. And so instead of having to read like 100 Agile books and try to conceptualize how would I put this into project management, we pull it all out. I took credit for Discipline Agile. They pull it all out and they reorganize it into phases. And this conceptually makes a lot of sense for project managers. So I don't do anything without DA.
Awesome. Well, I did want to pull up, posted it earlier, but let me go ahead. This is Chastine's next delivery of the CAPM, so it's coming up.
That was a hairdo ago.
About a month from now, November 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So if you've got any questions at all, hit Chastine up on LinkedIn. You can scan the QR code, and it'll take you directly to the page description on this particular delivery. And yeah, Chastine, any final things that you want to say on the CAPM?
Oh my goodness, let me think. I feel like we've covered a lot. It's a really great training. And again, like I said, from a person who is in that recruiting space, knowing what employers are looking for, knowing what the industry looks like behind the scenes, right? What's really happening is, and this is, really quick, is people are just going to parse out. If you get 1,000 resumes, they're just going to parse words out of your resume, and they're going to look for keywords. No one is looking at all 1,000 resumes, and even if you chunk that down to 100, no one is looking at all 100 resumes. It's just not what happens. There's an algorithm. It pulls out words. It pulls out information. And it goes, okay, you hit 10 of the 12 that we're looking for. We'll move you on to the hiring manager. This is how it works. And so when you're able to not only put on the training, put on the certification, and then, like I said, in our class, because this is so focused in career development and switching industries, is we'll rephrase your resume and talk about how does it look like we've been working projects every day, all day. We just don't realize it. And we're gonna format all these things that we do at work into a project standpoint. We're gonna use those words that are gonna get pinged in the algorithm. They're gonna give you that leg up and hopefully get you in front of the hiring manager out of the 1,000 people who apply for this remote role.
Yeah. So many benefits. As always, Chastine, thanks a lot for streaming today. And anyone that's, again, watching this live, or if you're watching this on replay, any questions, Chastine's an expert on this workshop as well as the other ones. So definitely reach out to her.
Yeah, ping me on LinkedIn. I'm super reachable.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on our next live stream.